Hello, welcome back. So let's start off today by talking about our glia cells. Our glia cells, if you remember, are the cells that are assisting other cells, assisting your neurons, and they're not all the same. There are 5 different kinds of glial cells that we'll be talking about. One are ependymal cells. These are cells that line the brain ventricles. If you remember what a brain ventricle is, we just talked about that. They promote production and circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. Astrocytes, if you look at an astrocyte, think that prefix astro like astronaut. They're called astrocytes because they look like stars. So they facilitate transfer. They regulate ion concentration in the extracellular fluid. They promote blood flow to neurons. They form the blood-brain barrier, and they replenish certain neurons. Oligodendrocytes will myelinate the axons in the central nervous system. They provide the myelin for the central nervous system. Microglia, looks just kind of like a snowflake here, are immune cells that protect the central nervous system from pathogens. A pathogen would be something that can cause an infection, cause harm. So we don't want infections in our brain. So that's helpful in that. And then Schwann cells, they look like kind of little rolls of paper towels around the axons. These are the cells that myelinate the axons in the peripheral nervous system. So please be able to tell me what are those 5 types of glia cells. Be able to tell me what each one of them do. If we look at a brain through human development, you can roughly divide it into 3 regions: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain being the front part, midbrain being the middle, actually it's kind of at the base of your brain, and the hindbrain being the back part, what eventually kind of becomes the brain stem. The forebrain has your olfactory bulb, that's the smell, and the cerebellum, so it'll produce smell output, olfactory output. It'll regulate your sleep, your learning, and complex processing. The midbrain, middle brain, mid part, central in your brain, coordinates routing of sensory input. So if you think of your senses, a lot of that's going through your midbrain. And the hindbrain forms the cerebellum. A lot of this is your involuntary activities, your blood circulation, controlling your motor activities. By 3 weeks, you can see these 3 regions by 3 weeks of embryonic development, you can see these 3 regions in an embryonic brain. You can see the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. This forebrain is going to branch into the telencephalon and the diencephalon. The midbrain will stay unbranched as the mesencephalon, and the hindbrain will branch into the medencephalon and the myelencephalon. So what 3 regions of the brain are present in a 3-week-old human fetus? By 6 weeks, you see these 5 regions: the telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, medencephalon, and myelencephalon. If you carry this on to see the brain structures as you become a child and adult, the telencephalon turns into the cerebrum. This includes your cerebral cortex and your basal nuclei. The diencephalon will turn into your thalamus, your hypothalamus, the epithalamus, all the thalamus region. Sometimes that's called the diencephalon. The mesencephalon will develop into the midbrain, or part of your brainstem. Your medencephalon will develop into the pons and the cerebellum. The pons is part of the brainstem. The cerebellum is here. And the myelencephalon will develop into the medulla oblongata, which is here. So let's go through and describe these different portions of your brain, what they're doing. The cerebrum is all of this kind of the brainy, what you think of like that brainy, spongy, walnutty stuff in your brain. It is where you're learning. It is the center for your emotions, memory, and perceptions. It's divided into 2 hemispheres, left and right. You can see there's kind of like a division going through here. And the outer layer is called the cerebral cortex. And that cerebral cortex is especially important for perception, for voluntary movement that you think about doing, and for learning. Also, the left side of your cerebral cortex receives and controls information for the right side, and the right side of your brain receives and controls movement for the left side of your body. So if you close your left eye and look with only your right eye, that information will come to your left hemisphere. And if you're only touching something with your left hand, that information will come to your right hemisphere. Your cerebrum is divided into two different parts, or includes two different parts. The corpus callosum, which are these lines here. These are bands of white matter that connect the left and right hemispheres so they can communicate with each other. So, you can read something and pick up that language with this center and then be able to understand it here with the other side of your brain. Your two portions of your brain can communicate. If you were to sever that connection, you would have a lot of trouble with processing information, as the two sides of your brain wouldn't be able to communicate with each other. Deeper within your white matter are the basal nuclei. They're shown in this picture as these pink little spots. And these are centers for planning, learning, and movement control. And if these areas are damaged, especially during development, it can lead to a disease called cerebral palsy. So what is the band of white matter that connects the two hemispheres of the brain? We just discussed several brain parts. Please make sure you're comfortable with telling me what each of those brain parts does. Next is our cerebellum. The cerebellum is this teal region here, kind of at the base in the back, if you're looking from the back, or here. And this portion of your brain, the cerebellum, it's always been my favorite part because it sounds like my name at the start, right? Sarah, there. Okay. Anyway, this helps in learning and remembering motor skills. It will receive sensory information about positions of the joints and lengths of the muscles. So through that, it kind of helps you develop your balance. It will be involved in your hearing and your visual input, your sight. And because of its involvement in understanding your joints and your muscles, it helps to adjust the cerebrum's motor commands or motor correction to help you develop better hand-eye coordination, for example. Then let's move into the diencephalon. The diencephalon is all of this area here, and it's divided into a few different regions. First, the thalamus, which is here in the middle. This is the main input center for sensory information going towards the cerebrum. It is a sensory information from your senses. Motor commands from the cerebral cortex will be sorted and sent to the correct locations for processing. And it's two little masses about the size of a walnut. Then the hypothalamus here is the control center of the body for your body temperature. So it decides if your body is 98.6 degrees, it is that temperature because the hypothalamus says it is. If you're running a fever, you're running a fever because the hypothalamus says you need to. The hypothalamus also helps set your body clock. It's involved in your circadian rhythm. It regulates the anterior pituitary gland to regulate hunger and thirst, mating behavior, fight or flight. So sometimes it's called the 4 F's. Feeding for hunger and thirst, fight or flight for fight or flight, and then maybe there's an F word for mating that you could come up with here. Mating, fornication maybe. Anyway, and it also produces products of the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. The next part of the diencephalon is the epithalamus, and this includes the pineal gland. The pineal gland sits back here. And the epithalamus produces melatonin. This is a neurotransmitter that makes you drowsy, so it helps you decide it's time to go to bed now. Do you remember which portion of the diencephalon is responsible for raising your body temperature or creating a fever in order to help the immune system respond to an infection? Then we get to the brain stem. The brain stem includes these three regions: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. So first, the midbrain. The midbrain will receive information and integrate your sensory information and send it to your forebrain, all here. The sensory neurons for hearing will terminate or pass through the midbrain on their way to the cerebrum. It'll coordinate head-eye movements in response to sound and vision. So someone calls your name, you turn to look. A lot of that is because of your midbrain. It also includes a corpora quadrigemina, which will receive auditory and visual information and then integrate those reflex that go into higher brain centers. The pons and the medulla oblongata both are a relay center, kind of a command center on the way between the PNS, the peripheral nervous system, and the midbrain. The pons is important in breathing, and the medulla oblongata is important in the automatic homeostatic mechanisms, things like breathing, heart and blood vessel activity, swallowing, vomiting, and digestion. Things are automatic. You're not stopping and thinking about it. And homeostatic, meaning it's going to keep it in the balance hopefully for your health. The actions of the medulla oblongata often are impacted by the pons. They don't work independently. Then we get to the limbic system. The limbic system sometimes is called the lizard brain, interestingly, because this is kind of about what the lizard uses as its entire brain. In people, the limbic system helps with your feelings, your emotions. It will generate and experience emotions. And it is called the limbic system because it goes around the brainstem here. Limbic is Greek or Latin for around. And it involves the amygdala, the hippocampus, and parts of the thalamus. Altogether, these are called the limbic system. The amygdala, this massive nuclei around the base of the cerebrum, is really important in storing emotions in your memories so that you remember how you felt. You know, if you and your partner have a song that is your song, that emotion that comes when you hear the song, or if there is a scent that reminds you of a happy memory or something that reminds you of a bad memory, a lot of that is through the amygdala. Where is the limbic system located? What is the function of the limbic system? Okay, let's finish up this chapter we'll come back for one more lecture video. So I hope to see you soon. And I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're enjoying the end of this unit. I'll see you soon. Bye.